Hello and welcome or welcome back to Unwinding Minds. If you've ever wondered, why won't they just tell me what they need? Then this video is for you because today we're covering just that. We'll be reflecting together on some potential causes for these behaviors and on recognizing them in ourselves. We're also looking at what we can do to refresh the communication together and our perspectives when we have a loved one in our lives who doesn't tell us exactly what they need. As a qualified counsellor, I see a lot of people who struggle to self-advocate for their own needs, and I also see a lot of loved ones who are uncertain on what to do when this is happening. There's a lot for us to cover, so let's not dilly-dally. To begin with, let's talk about some, but not all of the reasons why some people do not state their needs clearly. There are so many reasons why someone might hold back from saying what they truly need. It's rarely about being difficult or mysterious, although I suppose sometimes it can be, but it's often about fear, habit, or difficult past experiences. So let's assess some reasons for this behavior. The fear of burdening others is incredibly common. It's possible that people that grew up with this fear might have also believed that asking for help makes them a nuisance. It's very, very common that. People-pleasing or perfectionism is also really common. For some people, this is tied into what they believe around being a strong or good person. They may believe that their worth is tied to being low maintenance, easygoing, chilled out, always coping on their own. Or it's possible that out of perfectionism, they believe that they shouldn't even have needs of others, that they should be responsible for supporting others, but that others should not ever need to support them. Not knowing one's own needs. Listen, not a single person I've ever met is fully aware of all of their needs at every moment of life. Heck, I know I'm not. Sometimes it isn't secrecy that drives poor communication of needs. It's uncertainty. You or they might not know what would help until much later. The fear of vulnerability and or learned behaviors. Stating a need like, I need help or I want affection, risks rejection, which can hurt more than staying silent. In a similar thread, rejection may have not been the only risk they've historically run into when expressing needs verbally. Sadly, if someone grew up in an environment where expressing needs got them ignored or even punished, they may have learned to get their needs met indirectly for their own safety and well-being. Chronic illness. You probably knew this point was coming if you've been following the channel for any length of time, because on this channel we focus on chronic illness, neurodiversity, and on disability. People with chronic illnesses or disabilities are so often put into the position of having to advocate for their own needs that it can be exhausting. A fatigue can form around having to tell everyone that you need things, and there can sadly also be a lot of embarrassment or self-consciousness depending on the needs that aren't yet being met. It can also feed back into that fear again that I talked about of burdening others. The desire for control. Some people want or just expect others to just know what they need because, if you guess correctly, it feels more genuine to them or more loving than if they have to ask for what they need. This game isn't even always played consciously, but it's one to try and observe gently in our own lives. Are there any areas where we're expecting others to just know what we need? Is this a realistic expectation? Could that be hurting us more than communicating our needs and having them met would be? Cultural or social conditioning. In some families or cultures, openly stating needs is seen as selfish or very rude, so people learn to hint at what they need instead of asking. This links back to the point around learned behaviours and safety. Stating a need out loud may not be seen as acceptable socially in certain cultures. And finally for this list, repeatedly being ignored or shut down. I talked about rejection earlier on, but I wanted to talk about another point that follows a similar thread, being silenced. If a friend, a loved one, or partner has repeatedly expressed a need and has been dismissed or silenced repeatedly, then they have learned from you that stating the need to you directly does not get it fulfilled. Over time, that erodes trust, especially when it's paired with a disingenuous reassurance that the need will be met at some magical stage down the line. This leads to a shutdown of our communication with one another, and ultimately, the trust has been eroded in these situations to the point that the person doesn't necessarily feel safe to bring up their needs with you anymore. It's really painful. I lied to you before when I said that this was the end of the list. It isn't. I reflected on it later on and realised I hadn't factored in neurodiversity and brain differences. You know, a key part of my job. So you can think of this as a little bonus list. Difficulty with identifying internal states, aka alexithymia. Many ND people experience alexithymia even if they aren't aware of it having a name. In alexithymia, the brain has trouble recognizing, labeling, and sorting feelings and bodily needs. You can't always tell what's wrong, and therefore it's hard to ask for help clearly. This goes back to that earlier point that sometimes we don't really know what we need. Sensory overwhelm or shutdown. If someone is overstimulated by light, noise, movement, too much social interaction, they might enter a fight or flight kind of mode. In this state, language can become difficult to access, making needs much harder to express. Executive function challenges. With ADHD or similar conditions, someone might genuinely forget to communicate their needs, or not realize them until it feels too late. Planning to speak up requires brain processes, planning, organization, timing, prioritization, etc., that may be harder to manage with their brain chemistry. Communication style differences. Some people think in pictures or patterns rather than words, which makes translating their inner experience into spoken language much slower or much more exhausting. It may not feel accessible to that person to interact verbally around their needs. Others find direct speech too intense and might prefer writing or non-verbal communication. Just because it may be easy or effortless for you to speak your needs does not mean that it is for somebody else. And finally, for the bonus list, masking and long-term social conditioning. Neurodiverse individuals often learn to mask their differences to fit in. That often translates into suppressing their own needs or ignoring the signals within themselves about those needs to avoid drawing attention from others or being misunderstood. Now, as I said before, there are so many reasons why there can be unspoken needs in our relationships. Those lists are not exhaustive, and I'd be really curious to hear from others. Can you think of any reasons that we haven't talked about in this video for why needs aren't always verbalized? Pop them down in the comments if you can. Pop them down in the comments below. Recognizing these causes can help us to respond with empathy and compassion rather than frustration when we notice someone not communicating clearly around what they need. Frustration can arise for some people when they're around someone who doesn't voice their needs. It can cause them to feel awkward or uncomfortable when they have to finally voice needs of their own. The supporting person may also feel helpless and may even start to do too many things in an effort to be helpful. Unfortunately, that can backfire really badly. Sometimes when people are too heavy-handed around helping, they can accidentally set back progress. It can also lead to a feeling of confusion. If a need is felt and not voiced, the other person who is supporting may feel very lost around what they can do to help, or whether what they are doing could be making things worse, quite by accident. After all, for all the supporting person knows, resentment could be building up between the two of them because, well, needs weren't communicated clearly, and therefore weren't met. This is not to stigmatize the person who's not communicating clearly. As I just stated, there are a lot of reasons why this happens, but the end result is often the same. A lack of clarity in our communication then also leads to a lack of intimacy and closeness. When we give others the chance to help us, it gives them the opportunity to get closer to us, to be more vulnerable and intimate with each other. That's the foundation of love, at least in my humble opinion. So let's talk about strategies to support the communication with someone who routinely doesn't voice their needs with you. In a separate video, I'm happy to cover the opposite side of this dynamic. Strategies to begin communicating your needs if you're the one who struggles to put them into words. So please comment below if that topic does interest you, and I will put together a video on just that. The core message that I want to get across is that good communication is about collaboration. You will not find the most productive results if you tell the other person what you think they should be doing. That's just more likely to get someone's back up. Connecting to each other is vital, so here are some approaches that make conversations feel safe for both of you and collaborative. Remember, for some people, there is going to be an element of difficulty trusting you. That may be linked to your shared history together, or it may be historic. Either way, there may be some defensiveness and some difficulty adapting to sharing their needs with you. It is possible that even with consistent and clear communication, that it's safe to voice needs. Well, the other person may not make the choice to share what they need with you. We're not in control of the other person or of their choices, only our own actions and our own words. So with all of that said, let's explore some ways to make this conversation have a better chance of success. Create emotional safety first. Show them through your tone, your actions, your patience, and your consistency that it's genuinely okay to express themselves. Telegraphing emotional safety helps to build trust. Avoid ultimatums and pushing the other person to speak to you about their needs. This will push them further away. Judging them for their lack of communication about their needs, well, it will prevent you from really gaining insight into how the two of you can support each other. Ask open and not closed questions. Reflect on the way you're asking about their needs. You okay? Do you need help? Those are examples of closed questions, and they can be helpful. But the problem with a closed question is that it can be answered yes or no, with no further expansion needed. Furthermore, people can answer these questions in that knee-jerk way. They may be used to saying yes when really they feel more no. So instead try what would feel most supportive right now. This invites them to reflect rather than simply saying, no, I'm fine. Pay attention to nonverbal cues. I can't emphasize this enough. According to a study by Dr. Merabian, around 55% of communication is in body language. I've popped some information about that study in the description too if you're interested. It's often misquoted or misunderstood, and it is pretty old, so take it with a pinch of salt. But it remains relevant here. Notice changes in body language, energy, or routine, because they often speak louder than words. This doesn't mean constant vigilance, of course, but curiosity is your friend here. What have you noticed about the person's response when they try to bring up their needs? Do they look tense, irritated? Do they move their body away physically? Do they begin to frown? These are subtle cues at times, but they can reveal a lot. Offer small, specific options. Rather than tell me what you need, which they may not be able to identify yet, try going into something specific. Would it help if I came with you to that appointment, or would you prefer some space? Choices feel less overwhelming than a blank page. Set the other person up for success. If sharing their needs is new to them, they are really going to struggle on how to do it at first. Giving them options takes some pressure off, and it gives you the chance to offer forward the ways you can help without compromising on your own boundaries. It's the ideal thing, really. Be patient with silence. Sometimes the pause is where the real thinking happens. In counselling, we're taught this early. In life, we're not taught it at all. Silence is not the same as the silent treatment. It's choosing to let the space between words breathe, instead of rushing to fill it. If the person in front of you struggles, through alexithymia or differences in cognition, to say out loud what they need, then they may need silence and time to process their thoughts and their feelings. Notice and name patterns without blame. If you sense they're upset or hinting at something, acknowledge it gently. Instead of, well, why don't you just say what you want? Which sounds accusatory. Let's try, I feel like something's on your mind, and I'm open to hearing it. Am I picking up on that right? That shows that you're paying attention without forcing them to say what's going on. Ask open, curiosity-based questions. Invite them to share rather than interrogating. What's important to you here? How can I support you better? Or what would feel good for you right now? These questions are much more broad, they're not as threatening, and they give people space to express themselves without the tendency to cause the defensive response. I like to add in, you don't have to answer this right now, but I would like to understand, etc. That takes some pressure off to come up with an answer right away, which can be really hard. Be clear and kind that you are struggling because of the lack of clarity. Let's be direct and compassionate with each other. Phrases like, I realize I'm happiest when we plan together, instead of guessing. Could we perhaps try being a bit clearer with each other? That makes it a shared improvement, not just their problem, whilst also acknowledging that this is causing a struggle for you. Finally, toughest for last, accept that you may not make progress in the communication and decide what to do with that. Even with patience and with clear, kind communication, some people will cling to indirect communication styles. At the point that it feels like you have done what you can and continuing to try and improve the communication is not benefiting you or it's taking too much out of you, you then need to decide whether you can live with it or if it needs clear boundaries around who and how you spend time with people. I said it before, we cannot control what others do. The other person may simply be living their life using a different rule book than you. There may be less desire on their end to change this. If there is, forcing them is not gonna work. If you've made it this far, well done. I know that I waffle and I know that this is a lot to take in. The good news is that you can come back to this video and review these strategies whenever you need to. Remember, this is not stationary. It's going to be an ongoing process. Sometimes people grasp really quickly that they're not communicating their needs clearly enough and work to make big changes quickly. But usually, this is going to take a lot of time and patience from both ends. The other thing that can help, you know what I'm going to say, therapy. Get some counseling if it feels like this is affecting your life and your happiness. If you recognize yourself here, if you find it difficult to voice your needs, counseling can be transformative. And if you're struggling with another person's lack of communication, then you can explore that openly and what it is about that that's so hard on you. Counseling helps to uncover the why. You explore where the fear or the reluctance began if you're struggling to find your voice, or you can explore the emotional challenges of worrying about not meeting the other person's needs. Counseling teaches us brand new language as well. You can learn to describe your feelings and needs without shame or apology, or listen without judgment. A talented therapist will model behaviors that strengthen all of your relationships, and it builds self-worth. If you're struggling to voice your needs because of how you feel about yourself, over time with counseling, you can begin to believe that your needs are not only valid, but really worth meeting. When we practice the skills that I mentioned before, we protect our relationships. We can stop resentment building, and we can learn to respond to one another with grace. rather than guessing games. This helps us to preserve our relationships. However, it's important to balance looking into the needs of others with also looking into our own needs. Let's not slip into people-pleasing the person who is not communicating their needs with you. Self-kindness comes first. Apart from the fact that you deserve to look out for number one as a priority, it's much easier to care for others without burning out when we're also caring for ourselves. Check in with yourself before you check in with others. Notice when you're tempted to read someone's mind. Pause, simply ask instead. Slow down. You don't have to know everything. More importantly, you can't know everything about someone or what they need. You're likely to see success if you try some of these strategies. So celebrate when someone opens up. Even if it's just a little, that positive reinforcement matters, and negative reinforcement sets us back. Communicating with someone who keeps their needs tucked away in their mind, it can take a lot of patience, but making efforts to communicate with them is an act of love, both for them and for yourself. And if you're the quieter one, learning to speak up is not selfish. It's an invitation to deeper connection. Counselling can give you the language to express what you need. Gentle self-care practices can give you the confidence to speak it into the world, and kindness to yourself and others can hold it all together. I am so grateful to you for spending this time with me today. Don't forget to like the video if you've enjoyed it or if you've learned something, or to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future. We cover many aspects of chronic illness, disability, neurodivergence, and mental health on this channel, and we do upload pretty regularly. I pay attention to the subjects you show the most interest in, so comment below. Let me know what you would like to see next or what you found interesting about this one. If this video resonated, perhaps you can share it with someone else who might find it helpful as well. And check the description if you're interested in working with me on a one-to-one basis around the difficulties that I described in this video, as I do also offer private counselling. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.